There's a smell coming from the Tesla. It's been sitting on the upper deck of a Hollywood tow yard for 3 days. Flies crawling across the front hood. The manager can't take it anymore. He picks up the phone and calls the LAPD. The car is registered to a 20-year-old musician with over 1 billion streams to his name. And right now, he's on tour, playing sold-out rooms on the other side of the country. Detectives are about to open that trunk, and what's inside is going to take almost a year and tear a hole straight through the music industry. I'm Cole, and this is Midnight Files. Lake Elsinore, California. It's about 70 miles southeast of Los Angeles. Inland Empire. The kind of town families move to when the city gets too expensive and too loud. Strip malls, dry hills, a big lake that turns green in the summer. And in that town, there was a girl everybody kind of knew. Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Long, curly black hair, backpack on her shoulder. She walked to the corner store almost every single day with her friends. Candy, soda, a bag of Takis. The people behind the counter knew her face. Neighbors knew her name. She loved to sing. She loved to dance. She was a middle schooler. That's it. That's who she was. But there was something happening in her life that she wasn't telling anybody. According to a court filing later laid out by Los Angeles County prosecutors, in January of 2022, Celeste met somebody. His name was David Anthony Burke. She was 11 years old. Now, you might not know the name David Burke, but if you've been anywhere near a phone in the last 4 years, you know his voice. He went by D4VD. 4 letters, a 0 for the A, the kind of name you only pick if you grew up online. And he did. He started out as a kid in Texas making Fortnite videos on YouTube. He needed background music that wouldn't get his videos hit with copyright strikes, so he started writing his own, recording it on his phone, in a closet. Indie rock, R&B, lo-fi, all blended together into something that sounded like nothing else on the internet. And then in 2022, he dropped a song called Romantic Homicide. It exploded. TikTok, Spotify, SoundCloud, Instagram, over 1 billion plays. He opened for SZA. He released EPs. He played Coachella. He had a major label behind him, brand deals, a world tour on the horizon. By 20 years old, David Burke wasn't a kid in a closet anymore. He was one of the biggest young artists in music. And prosecutors say that somewhere in that rise, in November of 2023, he began a sexual relationship with Celeste Rivas Hernandez. He was 18. She was 13. I want to be very clear about what we're doing here. Everything I just said, the meeting in 2022, the relationship starting in 2023, that is the prosecution's version. It's laid out in court filings. It has not been tested at a trial. David Burke has pleaded not guilty, and his attorneys say the evidence will clear him. But here's the part that isn't anybody's version. Here's the part that's on video. February 2024. Celeste doesn't come home. She's 13 years old, a 7th grader. Her family files a missing persons report with the Riverside County Sheriff's Office. Her mother goes on Facebook and begs her to come home. Missing posters go up around the neighborhood. The family starts knocking on doors, asking neighbors for security camera footage. And investigators do what investigators do. They pull her phone records. And one number keeps showing up. On February 17, 2024, Riverside County deputies call that number. The man who answers is David Burke. According to prosecutors, he tells them he last spoke to Celeste around the 13th or 14th. He says he didn't know she was a minor. He says he didn't know she'd been reported missing. The deputies tell him, Los Angeles County is going to send someone to your house. And they do. That same day, a deputy shows up at the door of the home where Burke was staying, and he's wearing a body camera. That video was played in a Los Angeles courtroom this week. In it, the deputy tells Burke that Celeste is 13 years old, that she's a runaway. He shows him her yearbook photos. And Burke tells him he only met her once, in person, one time. And then he says it. She told me she was 18. He tells the deputy that everyone keeps telling him she's 13, but that's not what she said. He says he doesn't know where she is. 2 days later, Celeste walks back into her house in Lake Elsinore. And this is where the story starts to bend. Her family does what any family would do. They take her phone away. They cut the line. And prosecutors allege that David Burke found a way around it. They say he paid a junior high school student, a kid in Celeste's own class, $1,000 to hand her a cell phone that he had bought, so they could keep talking. And according to prosecutors, they did a lot more than talk. They say the two of them spent a significant amount of time together through 2024. Weekends at his rented house in the Hollywood Hills, trips to Las Vegas, to London, even to Texas, to meet his family. In April of 2024, Celeste is reported missing again. She comes back again. On September 7, 2024, she turns 14. In November of 2024, prosecutors say the two of them broke up, but the texting never stopped. And the messages, they allege, suggest the relationship didn't really stop either. Then in March of 2025, prosecutors say Celeste sent him a message. And in it, she tells him she wants more for herself than just sex and hanging out. She's 14 years old. Now here's what's happening on the other side of that phone. David Burke's entire life is about to change. His debut studio album, Withered, is set to drop on April 25, 2025. Tickets for his first world tour go on pre-sale April 23rd. He just played Coachella. His financial manager would later testify in court that between 2023 and 2025, Burke grossed somewhere between $10 and $11 million. Everything he built since that closet in Texas is about to pay off. And then, prosecutors say, on April 22, 2025, there's an argument. A long one. And in it they allege Celeste threatened to go public, to tell people about the relationship, to end his career and destroy his life. That's the prosecution's claim. That's their motive. 24 hours later, Celeste Rivas Hernandez disappeared for the last time. April 23, 2025. Around 8:40 at night, prosecutors say David Burke orders an Uber and sends it 70 miles out to Lake Elsinore to pick up Celeste. At 10:10 p.m., she's dropped off at his rented home in the Hollywood Hills. That is the last confirmed sighting of Celeste Rivas Hernandez alive. At 10:30 p.m., 20 minutes later, prosecutors say Burke texts her phone and asks where she is. And they allege she was already dead. They say those texts weren't a question. They were a cover, part of a premeditated plan. In their filings, prosecutors state that shortly after she walked into that house, she was stabbed multiple times and that he stood there while she bled out. I'm not going to go further than that, because that's a child, and she deserves better than that from me. At 11:30 p.m., prosecutors say Burke got in his car and left. He drove north, 90 miles north, up into the hills of Santa Barbara County, near Lake Cachuma. And the whole drive? They say he kept texting her phone, calling it, over and over and over. Remember that. It matters later. April 24th. He comes home from Santa Barbara County. Prosecutors say he sends 2 more texts to her phone, and then, after April 26th, he never tries to contact her again. That same day, he goes and does a radio interview, promoting the album. And according to court documents, that same day, a shovel gets delivered to his house through Postmates. April 25th. Withered drops. The world hears the album. It does well. And there's a music video on it for a song called One More Dance. In that video, D4VD puts a bloody body into the trunk of a car. At the time, nobody thought twice about it. It was a music video. Artists do dark imagery all the time. Nobody thought twice about it. For 4.5 more months. Then come the purchases. May 1st, 2025. Prosecutors say 2 chainsaws are ordered on Amazon and delivered to the Hollywood Hills house, bought under a fake name. May 5th, 2025. a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and a blue inflatable pool. Same fake name. Investigators would later testify the aliases used included Travion Davis and Victoria Mendez. Prosecutors believe Celeste's remains were dismembered on May 5th.
I'm going to leave it there.
What I will tell you is that investigators say fragments of that blue pool were later found embedded in her remains, and that prosecutors allege the pool was used to keep blood off the garage floor. May 8th. Prosecutors say he drives back to that same area in Santa Barbara County.
May 31st. He goes back a third time.
July 7th. They say he orders something called a burn cage on Amazon, same fake name, as part of a plan to incinerate evidence. Detectives testified this week that they found an incinerator box at the house.
Unopened. Hidden behind a piano. July 29th, 2025.
This is the day the whole thing comes apart, and nobody knows it yet. Prosecutors say surveillance video shows David Burke driving his Tesla, a black Model X, and parking it on Bluebird Avenue, a street just around the corner from his house. Then he walks back home, through an alley. Digital forensics presented in court showed his iPhone, which he'd nicknamed Tranquilizer, connected to that Tesla's system for the last time on July 29th.
Prosecutors say he was the last person to drive that car. And then he leaves it there.
August comes. He goes on tour, the Withered World Tour. He's playing cities. He's signing merch. He's on stage.
And the Tesla just sits. A week, 2 weeks, a month.
Tickets pile up under the wiper. Neighbors in one of the most expensive zip codes in America start complaining about the abandoned car on their street. It's summer in Los Angeles, triple-digit heat, day after day. Eventually, somebody calls it in. In early September, the Los Angeles Department of Transportation tows the Tesla to the Hollywood area official police garage.
It sits on the upper deck of that lot for 3 days. And on the morning of September 8, 2025,
the tow yard manager calls the LAPD because of the smell and the flies. Detectives get a search warrant before they open anything. LAPD robbery homicide detective Josh Byers responded that day, and he testified about it in court this week.
They opened the front trunk, and they found human remains. The remains had been dismembered and placed in 2 bags.
That's all I'm going to say about it. Celeste's mother and father were sitting in that courtroom this week when those photographs went up on the screen. Her mother had to be fanned by a stranger because she looked like she was going to pass out.
So we're going to move on. For 8 days, the LAPD didn't know who she was.
The remains were too badly decomposed. Southern California summer, months in a sealed compartment.
And here's the thing, the story hit the news immediately.
Body found in Tesla registered to famous singer. It was everywhere within hours. And in Lake Elsinore, a father saw that story.
And he called the LAPD
because his daughter had been missing.
He gave them her dental records.
On September 16, 2025, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner made the identification.
Celeste Rivas Hernandez, 14 years old.
She had been found on September 8th, 1 day after what would have been her 15th birthday.
And investigators noticed something else. On her right index finger, there was a small tattoo. It read, "Shh." David Burke had the same tattoo, on the same finger.
September 17th, LAPD serves a search warrant at the Hollywood Hills home Burke had been renting. Detectives are photographed carrying out a computer and other items. According to court documents, in that garage, they found stains that tested positive for blood, and the DNA matched Celeste. September 19th, D4VD cancels the rest of his U.S. tour. His Los Angeles show disappears from the venue website. A scheduled appearance at the Grammy Museum vanishes. Brands start pulling out. Crocs, Hollister. Artists who'd collaborated with him, Kali Uchis, Laufey, pulled their songs with him off streaming platforms. The career that prosecutors say he killed to protect evaporated in about 72 hours.
And then the internet took over.
And this is the part I need to be careful with. because a lot of what went viral in September 2025 was flat out false. Romantic Homicide shot back up the global charts, jumping more than 100 spots on Spotify as millions of people re-listened to it looking for a confession. And a screenshot went around claiming the lyric was, "In the back of my car, I killed you." That's not the lyric. It never was. The real line is, "In the back of my mind, I killed you." Somebody edited it. A theory spread that D4VD had been releasing music on Celeste's birthday every year for 3 years. A huge Twitch streamer amplified it. It wasn't true. The release dates didn't line up. TMZ reported the body had been partially frozen. LAPD publicly disputed it. A rumor spread that she'd been decapitated. LAPD publicly disputed that too. And when the LAPD chief, Jim McDonnell, finally spoke about it, he said flatly that a lot of what had been circulating online was way off. "I'm telling you this because I think it matters. A real 14-year-old girl died, and for weeks the internet turned her into a puzzle box." Meanwhile, the actual investigation went quiet and slow. September 29, 2025. Celeste's death certificate is released. Cause of death, undetermined. Sources told ABC News that was because of the condition of the remains. There simply wasn't enough left to work with. And that's a problem, because in a homicide case, if you can't establish how someone died, you don't have a case. November 18, 2025. Law enforcement sources tell reporters that David Burke is now considered a suspect, and that despite what his PR team was saying publicly, he was not cooperating. December 9, 2025. The medical examiner reverses the undetermined finding. Celeste's death is ruled a homicide, caused by 2 penetrating injuries to the torso. Now they have a case. But they still couldn't get people to talk. In January 2026, prosecutors convened a Los Angeles grand jury, not to indict, but to force witnesses to testify. Burke's own parents, Colleen and Dawood Burke, were subpoenaed. They fought it. In Texas, they argued they were being denied due process. A Texas appeals court denied them in February and ordered them to comply. And in those Texas court filings that got unsealed and leaked to the press, investigators finally said out loud what everybody had assumed for months. David Burke was labeled a target. 1 count of murder. One of his friends, a man known as Neo, was reportedly arrested for failing to show up as a grand jury witness. Burke's financial manager would later testify that after the remains were found, key people around Burke, including his own mother, started using encrypted messaging apps. And then there's January 17, 2026. A Caltrans worker is out clearing brush along State Route 154 in Santa Barbara County. Remember Santa Barbara County? The drive on the night of April 23rd. The 2 return trips in May? Same area. And in the dirt off that highway, that worker finds something. Celeste Rivas Hernandez's passport card. April 16, 2026. Just before 5 in the evening, LAPD officers arrest David Anthony Burke at a Hollywood Hills residence. He's booked at 11:12 that night at the 77th Street station. No bail. April 20, 2026. Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman stands in front of a wall of cameras with LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell beside him. And he lays it all out. First-degree murder, continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, unlawful mutilation of human remains. And then the special circumstances, the allegations that make this a death penalty case. Lying in wait. Because prosecutors say he invited Celeste to that house on April 23rd, knowing what was going to happen. Murder for financial gain. Because prosecutors say he did it to protect the music career worth millions. Murder of a witness. Because prosecutors say Celeste was the key witness in a child sex abuse investigation, and killing her ended it. Plus an allegation that he personally used a sharp instrument. Hochman told reporters he's a father of 3. And he called it every parent's nightmare, a daughter who goes out one night and never comes home. That afternoon, in a downtown courtroom, a not guilty plea was entered on David Burke's behalf. During the proceedings, somebody called in a bomb threat and the entire criminal courts building had to be evacuated. Prosecutors revealed they had gathered more than 40 terabytes of evidence.
The days after were brutal. April 21st.
Celeste's family speaks publicly for the first time through their attorney. They describe her as a beautiful, strong girl who loved to sing and dance. They say they miss her deeply.
And then one line, "All we want is justice for Celeste."
April 22nd. The autopsy report is released. Cause of death, multiple penetrating injuries. The report also noted presumptive positives for benzodiazepines and methamphetamine or MDMA in her system.
April 23rd. In court, prosecutors allege a significant amount of child sexual abuse material was found on Burke's phone.
Later, an updated death certificate stated it was unclear whether Celeste had been pregnant in the year before she died. At that point, the family's attorney said they would stop making public statements because of the details coming out almost daily.
The preliminary hearing was supposed to start May 1st.
Then May 26th, then June 29th, then July 21st. Every delay for the same reason, the sheer volume of digital evidence. 40 terabytes takes time to read.
And then yesterday,
Tuesday, July 21st, 2026, it finally began.
David Burke walked into the Clara Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center in an orange jumpsuit and shackles. His attorneys asked the judge to remove the restraints. They argued he'd been to 5 hearings and never once tried to run, and that the shackles were undignified and unnecessary.
Judge Charlene Olmedo split the difference. Handcuffs off so he could take notes and drink water. Leg shackles stay.
Celeste's parents, Jesus Rivas and Mercedes Martinez, were in the gallery. Court staff asked if they wanted to step out before the graphic testimony. They both chose to stay. Detective Josh Byers took the stand and described what he found in that tow yard. The photographs went up. Reporters in the room said there were audible reactions from the gallery. Celeste's mother covered her mouth. Someone had to fan her. And David Burke, according to reporters watching him, showed nothing.
Booking photos from April 16th were entered as exhibits, and in them, investigators pointed to the tattoos on his hands.
On his right index finger, and on his left ring finger, the name Celeste. Prosecutors also noted something about Celeste's left hand. 2 of her fingers were never recovered, and they allege one of them carried a tattoo of David Burke's name. But here's what you don't get from the headlines. The defense fought hard all day. Blair Burke, Marilyn Betnarski, and Regina Peter are not public defenders. They're some of the most experienced criminal defense attorneys in Los Angeles. And they went straight at the police work. They pointed out that 3 different law enforcement units, Hollywood Division, West Bureau, and Robbery Homicide, were all over that tow yard scene before criminalists ever arrived to process it. They asked why the bag containing the remains was never preserved as evidence or tested for DNA before it was destroyed. Detectives testified it was too damaged to keep, that all they could salvage were the handles and the zipper. They asked why there was no official sign-in log for officers entering the house. They asked why the outside of that burn box wasn't tested, why the outside of the vehicle wasn't tested. They asked why 2 chainsaws found in the home weren't kept for DNA analysis after an initial chemical test came back negative for blood. And they held up a photo of a blue iPhone 15 found at the residence and suggested it may have belonged to Celeste and may contain material that didn't come from David Burke at all. On cross-examination of the deputy from that 2024 welfare check, the defense emphasized that Burke talked to investigators voluntarily, that he gave them Celeste's contact information, that he cooperated. Their statement, from the day after his arrest, has never changed. David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez. They say the actual evidence will show he was not the cause of her death. And legal analysts watching this are split on what that defense actually looks like. Former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani said he expects the judge to find probable cause, because the standard at a preliminary hearing is low, but he said the defense might argue that somebody else in Burke's circle was responsible,
and he thinks that's a hard sell given the alleged motive. Defense attorney Mark Geragos floated something different. He raised the Robert Durst playbook, where a defendant admits to disposing of a body, but argues the death itself wasn't murder. Because here's the uncomfortable legal reality Geragos pointed out. Everything after a death, the saws, the cleanup, the purchases, is horrifying. But on its own, it isn't proof of murder. That is a defense theory being discussed by commentators on television. It is not what David Burke's attorneys have argued. As of right now, they have not publicly offered any version of events at all.
And that brings us to today. Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026.
Day 2 of the preliminary hearing in a downtown Los Angeles courtroom. Prosecutors say they plan to call more than 10 witnesses. Police, coroner, forensics. DA Hochman came out during a recess yesterday and reminded everybody what this hearing actually is. That the standard here isn't beyond a reasonable doubt. It's probable cause. And that they aren't showing everything they have.
They're saving it.
When it's over, Judge Olmedo decides one thing. Is there enough to send David Anthony Burke to trial? If he's convicted on all counts with those special circumstances, he faces life without the possibility of parole or death.
Hochman has not decided yet whether his office will seek it. Meanwhile,
70 miles southeast, in Lake Elsinore, there's a memorial.
Flowers,
candles, stuffed animals, photographs, handwritten notes from kids who went to school with her. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was laid to rest at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Roland Heights, California. She was 14 years old. She liked takis and soda from the corner store. She had long curly black hair. She loved to sing, and she loved to dance. She ran away from home 3 separate times, and every single time, her family reported it. Her mother posted about it. Her neighbors looked for her.
Somebody was always looking for her. Right up until the night, nobody could find her at all.
Note for viewers, David Anthony Burke has pleaded not guilty to all charges and is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. All allegations described here come from prosecution filings, court testimony, and public statements by law enforcement, and have not been proven at trial. This case is ongoing as of July 22, 2026.